Geez.
Hello, Eddie. Hello, Eddie.
How are you, man? How you been holding up?
I'm thinking of starting my own bowling career.
Have you been practicing at all, Geezer?
Yeah, practicing lying in bed.
Well, I'll tell you, I miss our bowling events. I miss all the events. Of course, it's been a crazy year. How have you been? Have you been in LA the whole time during the lockdown?
LA and Utah. I got a house up in the mountains in Utah, so I spend quite some time there.
Have you been working on music or doing anything during the downtime?
At the moment, I'm working on a memoir.
How far along are you?
Written about 10 pages. It's taken me 2 months to do 10 pages.
So we're looking at maybe a 2030 release, Geez?
Yeah, could be, yeah.
Well, I look forward to it whenever you get around to it. It's hard finding the discipline to do it, right? That was my problem when I wrote my books, is you need to adhere to deadlines. If you don't have somebody giving you a deadline, it's easy to just say, nah, I'll do it another time. That was my problem.
Exactly. Yeah, you sit down to write and then like somebody calls you or something, invites you out to dinner or something. And then it takes you like another 3 or 4 days to get into the spirit of writing it again. So it's really, you just have to lock yourself away and have absolutely nobody to interrupt you.
When are you going to start? Is it going to be your life story from being a kid forward, or is it going to be just starting around the time of Sabbath? What's your timeline on it?
No, it's about growing up in Aston, in Birmingham, and on from there.
Okay, so it'll start early on.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm excited for it. I look forward to it coming out. So obviously, Geezer, here we are again, revisiting and remembering this great period of Sabbath from Heaven and Hell and the Mob Rules and the Dio era of the band, as you well know, an era that's really, really special to me. And over the last 15 years or so, we've all done, I've done a lot with you guys about it. It's hard to believe these records, 40 and 41 years old now. What are your recollections about this whole period? Because I know, starting with Heaven and Hell, it was a rough period for you where you were almost not part of that. So give everybody your remembrances about this particular period of time for Sabbath.
Well, we started off, with Ozzy in the band, and we hired a house in Bel Air in Los Angeles, and we were doing, Tony and me and Bill were coming up with a lot of music, and Ozzy just didn't seem to be into anything that we were coming up with, and eventually Ozzy left the band, and it was either call it a daytime, or Tony said that he'd met this guy called Ronnie James Dio, who'd sang with Richie Blackmore and Rainbow, and what about, inviting him up and see if he could do anything with the music that we'd written so far. And Ronnie came up, and he was really, really enthusiastic, which is what we all needed, because we thought, it's going to be the end of the band. Ronnie came in, sang to the 3 music ideas that we had. I think the first one was Children of the Grave, and it sounded great from then on.
Children of the Sea, I think, right? Geese, Children of the Sea.
Yeah, Children of the Sea.
Yeah, not Children of the Grave, different era. You said Children of the Grave.
Oh God.
Also a great song, but obviously that would create a timeline issue. That's why I was checking.
Well, yes. Yeah, Children of the Sea, and I think Walk Away or something like that, and some other thing. And then I had to leave the band because I was having divorce problems back in England. So I left for a while. Meanwhile, they'd written the song Heaven and Hell and Die Young. And I came back and I heard Heaven and Hell and Die Young for the first time. As a fan would hear it, and I was just absolutely blown away with it. And the rest is history, as they say.
Now, when you left to go back to England to deal with that issue at the time, was it always the intent that you would return, or was it a question mark whether you would return to the band?
It was a question mark. I was just in such a bad way at the time, going through divorce, because I'd been with my wife since school days. And Ozzy leaving and then divorce, it was just like killing me. And I just had to get away and deal with my issues and just clear my head. And once I got that, I saw things in a totally different light. And I've been in touch with Tony and Bill all the time, every day since I'd left, because they wanted to know how I was doing, because they were worried about me, about the divorce. And eventually I felt great once I got everything out of the way. And then Tony says, you know, we want you back. Come back if you're up to it. And I came back, and it was great.
What, when you came back and rejoined, where were they in the process for the record? Had everything else been written? Had they started recording anything? Were they working with another bass player in the event you didn't come back?
Everything was recorded except Neon Nights that had yet to be written. And I came back, and I already knew like 3 of the songs anyway that were written before I'd left. And so there was just Heaven and Hell and Die Young that I hadn't really had any part of. And I just listened to them without any bass on, and then put my own bass to them all. And then we wrote Neon Nights in Paris.
So when you say everything was recorded, they actually recorded everything but the bass at that point, or somebody else laid a bass track down and then you replaced it?
Somebody else had put the bass track down, but when I heard it, that kept the bass off. So you know, everything I'd play would be what I'd do, and we went from there. And Martin Birch, the producer, really helped a lot as well.
Well, Martin, a legendary producer, Deep Purple, Iron Maiden, so many amazing things. Sadly, he passed away last year, but I was wondering about that too, because Sabbath had never worked with him before, and his work with Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules is, I think, brilliant. His records always sound incredible. And the last few Sabbath records before Heaven and Hell, if I'm not mistaken, the band themselves, you guys produced them. So what was it like working? Not only are you working with a new singer in Ronnie James Dio, but you're working with a new producer for the first time who you hadn't worked with and given somebody else the reins. How was that whole experience?
We desperately needed a producer. You know, it's no good trying to do stuff on your own when there's like 4 people saying, well, this should be louder and that should be louder and whatever. Having a producer it gave us a chance to you go in on your own. You didn't have to have the whole band there. You could just go in with the producer and work with just the 2 of you and bounce ideas off each other like that. And I think that's why those 2 albums, Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, stand up today, because the production's so great.
You know, it's also really, when you think about it in retrospect, it's super important that you ended up coming back in and doing Heaven and Hell, not only because your playing is brilliant on it and it's a brilliant record, but also because at that time, I would think for Tony and Bill at that time to market Sabbath with not only 1, but then 2 new members, if you hadn't come back, potentially a new bass player, would have made it even more challenging. It was going to be challenging to market, I would think, a band without the singer, a new singer at that point. But if you hadn't come back, then they're looking at the prospect of trying to get fans to buy into a band that was half of the band they once knew. I think that at that time, for that first record, that would have been difficult.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think I had total new enthusiasm for the band, because towards the end of the Ozzy era, everybody was like really low, and we were in a bad place. The record company was sort of forgot about us. They weren't behind us anymore, and we just needed a kick up the rump. and which is what we got when Ronnie came in, and it felt like a whole new band when I came back. You could just feel the enthusiasm with everyone, and it just worked.
And where were you when you came back into the band to record Heaven and Hell? Bill is still there. Bill would do the first few weeks of the tour for the Heaven and Hell record. But what were you sensing with Bill? Did you have any insights or feeling that you may lose Bill during that tour? Did you get a feeling that he maybe had one foot out the door while you were making the record with him?
No, not at all. I mean, I knew that Bill was really upset about, Ozzy's departure, as we all were. It's like losing one of your brothers, because we'd all virtually grown up together. We were all from the same part of Birmingham in Aston. And it really was like losing your brother. And I think it hit Bill harder than anyone else in the band. And his drinking just got worse and worse and worse. And when we went on tour, he just used to he used to booze all the time. And this one night, he was sitting outside his hotel drinking, and we all went to bed. Got up the next day, like about 10 o'clock in the morning. And Bill was still in the same position outside his hotel room, still boozing. And soon after that, he just got on his bus and left the tour without telling anybody.
Mm. Do you have, before you move on to Mob Rules and Vinny coming in, do you have a favorite track on Heaven and Hell? Is there one or two tracks that for you personally are great memories or just favorite songs?
I love playing Heaven and Hell. It's a great song to play live, because it was you could extend it for as long as you wanted to do and have a really good jam on it when we were doing it live. I think Children of the Sea, one of my favourites.
Do you have a least favorite? Do you have one you don't like?
Probably Walk Away.
Yeah, I bring that up because I read an interview with Tony recently, and he called that one out too. It's kind of a different. It's almost a happy song for Sabbath, even though the subject isn't, just the sound of it. It's kind of I'm not a musician, so I don't know how to talk about tunings or what have you, but it just seems like a totally different, almost a poppy approach for Sabbath.
Yeah, it's like a generic rock song.
Yeah. It's still a great song, but in the context of the record, but it's just a different tone to the record.
But if the rest of the album had sounded like that, then you'd never have heard of us again.
Yeah, and the other thing that's interesting is, Tony bringing up Ronnie coming in at that time. There was no interest in it. It wasn't about, well, let's go try to find a guy that sounded like Ozzy. I mean, you found Ronnie does not in any way sound like Ozzy vocally. So was there consideration to that when that decision was being made? I imagine you viewed it as a positive, like, no, this is going to be its own thing. We're going to get a guy that's going to put his own stamp on this stuff, as opposed to being a guy that vocally tries to impersonate, who was just in the band.
Well, when he came in, because it was like Children of the Sea, the first thing that we did, his voice was perfect for that song. And Ozzy did a version of it, and it just didn't sound right with Ozzy singing it. When Ronnie sang on it, it was like, yeah, that's what we need, that kind of a voice, that kind of approach. So it was positive from day one, really.
Does anybody have a recording of Ozzy singing Children of the Sea?
I think Ozzy might. I'm sure Tony has. He's got millions of cassettes with stuff on.
I'm going to talk to Tony on Thursday. If he did, that would have been an amazing inclusion to hear that as part of these reissues, which of course are now out now with a bunch of bonus content. And the bonus content, Geezer, on Heaven and Hell includes, there's some previously unreleased live stuff on here. There's a show from Hartford, Connecticut. And then there's part of that show from Hammersmith Odeon from 82. The bonus content on the Heaven and Hell reissue, what can you tell us about that?
Absolutely nothing. I haven't even heard it.
Oh, Geez, I love you. All right. And you know what? I can't tell you, my audience, how many times I've heard that from artists about their own records. I have no idea. So, all right, we'll move on from that.
I've been stuck in Utah for the last 2.5 months, and I think that was when they were sending the copies out, so I haven't really listened to them.
I was going to say, what, they don't have mail in Utah?
No.
FedEx doesn't go there?
Not at all.
Let me ask you about the Mob Rules moving forward. So when you go to make that record, now you're fully in. You had done the tour. There was none of that, no issue going into it. So for you were right there from the beginning, involved, I'm sure, in all of the writing. So I imagine for you that was even a more fulfilling experience because now everyone had been used to working with Ronnie. Talk about creating the Mob Rules.
Well, we'd done the album, Heaven and Hell, was a massive success. The tour was going great. And we were playing, actually, London Hammersmith, and we got the call that they were making a film of the heavy metal magazine, and they wanted us to do one of the tracks for the soundtrack. So they sent us the storyline and drawings of the part of the film that they wanted us to make, and we went into John Lennon's house. He had a little studio in his house, and we came up with the song, The Mob Rules. And it was written it almost wrote itself. It was done in 2 or 3 days. We finished it, written and recorded it, and sent it off to heavy metal people, and they put it on the soundtrack. So we got that started, and finished the Heaven and Hell tour, went to LA, and started writing the Mob Rules album.
The recording more comfortable, considering everybody had some time together at that point, I would imagine. Of course, now 2 new guys in Sabbath, because then Vinny's in the band and Vinny's recording with you. As a bass player, having a different guy playing drums for the first time really in your career at that point, with Bill not being there, and recording with a different drummer, how was that for you?
It was great for me, because I was relieved of having to write the lyrics, so I could concentrate on bass for once. And I thought me and Vinny played really well together. It was a good rhythm section, and Vinny, as you know, is a good bloke anyway. He fitted in straight away. No problem.
And that's another really important thing for people to remember, which I actually forgot for half a second. A huge turning point for you with this era of Sabbath was, you wrote the lyrics on all the Black Sabbath records and songs leading up to this. So you welcomed that when Ronnie came in and said he was a lyricist and was going to write his lyrics. You were good with that?
Oh, absolutely. Because when we did the Never Say Die album of the original Sabbath, doing the lyrics is like pulling teeth. I mean, I used to do some lyrics and give them to Ozzy, and he wouldn't even read them. He was totally disinterested. And I just hated writing lyrics by that time. And so it's such a relief when Ronnie came in, and somebody that could write interesting lyrics as well. It was a godsend.
The piece before the Mob Rules, that instrumental piece, E5150, is that something you came up with?
Yeah, I used bass pedals for it. I mean, a bass guitar with bass guitar pedals. I came up with that, and then Tony added some guitar bits to it. And I think Jeff Nichols on keyboards added a little bit at the end.
And that piece is on in front of the song The Mob Rules on the album The Mob Rules, but for the heavy metal soundtrack, that piece of music is actually used in the film itself, right?
Is it? I can't remember.
Yeah, I believe it is. I believe it's in the film itself at some point as like a production piece. And then, of course, it showed up as the intro piece. And and I'm trying to remember because the first time I would have seen Sabbath, I'm pretty sure was the Mob Rules tour. And did they not play that over the PA as you guys took the stage?
Yeah, that was the intro to the whole show.
Yeah, I do recall that being a pretty big moment in terms of the setup of the show. What do you recall, Geezer, about the Mob Rules tour?
Not a lot, to be honest. I remember doing the album and then going straight out back on tour. So it was just going through the usual merry-go-round.
Ronnie had often told me over the years that when he first came out and you guys did the Heaven and Hell tour, and it was the tour with the Black and Blue tour with Blue Oyster Cult, he had told me that there were members in the audience at that time. There were fans that gave him a hard time and gave you guys a hard time about Ozzy not being there, that it took a while. Did you feel that shift on the Mob Rules? Did you feel there was more acceptance towards Ronnie and that went away with the audience?
Oh, absolutely. I think people started accepting Ronnie after like the first week of the Heaven and Hell tour because, they'd heard the album by then and heard by word of mouth how good the show was with Ronnie. And they sort of accepted him almost straight away.
And I don't know if you know this, but like over the weekend, you mentioned Jeff Nichols a couple times, who played keyboards on these records. That over the weekend, Jeff Nichols' estate or whoever runs his social media put out what they call a previously unreleased song from the Dio Sabbath era called Slapback. Have you heard of that? Do you have any knowledge of that?
Yeah, that was one of the songs that we did before I left. It was probably the reason why I did leave. No, it was just one of those songs that didn't make the grade.
So are you on it? You played on it before? That was before you left to go back to England?
Yeah, that was right before I left. Yeah, it was just a one-off thing. We just jammed it and didn't think anything more of it. Didn't really work.
Was Jeff Nichols going to be was he the guy who played bass in your absence?
Yeah.
Interesting. It's interesting he has an unreleased song, but these two records on Rhino with bonus content from the label doesn't have it.
Oh no, it's incredible, and it's quite good quality as well. I've heard
right.
the two songs that from the Jeff Nichols thing, and it's reasonable quality.
I mean, we might be talking in a few years about yet another reissue of these records, Geezer. This is like the fourth one.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. Long after I'm not here anymore.
No, you're not going anywhere, man. You got to finish that book. It's going to take at least 10 years, so you're good. Hey, one or two quick things, and then I'll let you go. Something that I read in the liner notes to these reissues that I was floored by, and I think this is, in the world of heavy music, this is explosive news. But you maintain that the whole, for lack of a better term, metal sign, devil horns, whatever, that Ronnie is credited for starting, that you actually had been doing it before and you put the idea in his head to do it. You got to talk about that.
Absolutely. I've been doing that sign since, I've got pictures of me doing it since 1971. And I always used to do it in the breakdown in the song Black Sabbath. Just before it goes into the fast part at the end, I'd do that sign to the audience. And on the first couple of Heaven and Hell tour shows, Ronnie was saying, when I'm going on stage, everybody's doing the peace sign to me, and that's an Ozzy thing, and I feel like I should be doing something back to him. And I showed him he says, "What's that sign that you do in Black Sabbath?" And I showed him the devil horn sign, and he started doing it from there and made it famous.
So you realize that the significance of that has been out there and hugely debated as to where it started. Gene Simmons has taken some claim to it from saying he did it in 76 or whatever. Until these reissues came out and I got my copies the other day, I've never heard you talk about this, that this originated with you. How come did you ever say this publicly before?
I didn't really think much of it because, I was doing it, as I say, I got pictures of me doing it in 1971, and it was just an alternative to Ozzy's peace signs. I was doing it. And if you look at the Yellow Submarine album cover, John Lennon's cartoon character's doing it in 1966, or whatever it was. So, it's an old sign. I was just doing it because that Aleister Crowley used to do it.
Yeah, well, Ronnie's story about doing it, and I'm Italian myself, so I related to what Ronnie used to say, which was that it was a sign.
Grandma did it.
Yeah, well, it is in Italian folklore. It is a sign. It's called the Maloica. That is a real thing, and it's something to ward off evil spirits. And Ronnie, being Italian, he and I would talk about that all the time. But he never used to say that you put it in his head to do it.
I know there's a lot of things that he nicked off me. That he claimed that he was the originator, but he made it famous. So,
well, give me one other thing that he nicked off of you.
His album title, "Sacred Heart." That's where I used to go to school, and he called right? One of his songs "One Foot in the Grave," and I jokingly said you should call the album "One Foot in the Grave." And then when he left the band, he called one of his songs that.
Interesting.
He was very naughty about things like that. And I used to sign. When I did an autograph. I'd write magic, and and so Ronnie started writing magic as well. And in fact, he called his album Magica.
Right.
He was very naughty about things like that.
Did you ever confront him about it?
No. Only about the devil horn sign.
Yeah, because Gene Simmons tried to copyright that and lost that copyright, but you could have went after him for it if you had proof that you started it earlier.
Yeah, I've got photographs of me doing it.
Wow, I never knew that, Geez. I never knew that. And if you can clear up what exactly went on. Now, the record that came out as a live record of these two albums was the Live Evil record. And there's been so much talk about that. People deny it, confirm it, that Ronnie would go in and change things. You and Tony changed things, and that led to the breakup the first time around of that version of the band. Is that exactly what happened? Is that the truth? Is that what was at the core of all of it?
That's what was according to the engineer that was doing the engineering the live album. And plus, Ronnie was concentrating on his solo album by then. And I think Tony sort of took offence that Ronnie had gone out and got himself a solo album instead of concentrating on Sabbath. So it all came down to that.
The other really interesting thing about this period is here's Sabbath reborn with a new singer, widely loved records with Heaven and Hell and the Mob Rules. And then your former singer, Ozzy Osbourne, which people had written off and thought would never do anything ever again, also, amazingly, at the same time, puts out two brilliant records with an incredible guitar player with Randy Rhoads and Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake, this incredible band. How closely were you guys watching what he was doing, and what were your thoughts about? Were you shocked that he was able to create something like that with those people?
No, I mean, Ozzy had already left the band before the Never Say Die album, and he was always going on about doing his own thing back then. In fact, in one of the Sabbath photos, he's got a Blizzard of Oz T-shirt on. So I knew he just fell out of love with what we were doing in Sabbath. and I wasn't really paying much attention to what he was doing, to be honest. And then he came out, you know, and he was probably bigger than Sabbath ever was.
Well, of course, you would end up going to play in his band for a little bit, not too long after that. So
Yeah,
there
we
wasn't
always maintain friendship.
So there wasn't a competitiveness, there wasn't a rivalry, there wasn't looking at chart positions around the world and saying, you know, we got him here or he's got us there. It was none of that.
No, we all loved Ozzy. We were so glad that he got himself, because he was killing himself at the state that he was in when he left Sabbath. He really was on the verge, and if it wasn't for Sharon, I think he'd have topped himself eventually. He'd have OD'd or something, and she pulled him out of it, got him straight again.
Well, it's an incredible period. It's the period that I was first introduced to Sabbath. It's super special to me. I love that we're revisiting it again. I could talk about it forever. I love these records. I also think Dehumanizer is a very, very underrated record. For me, I really got into Dehumanizer when you guys came back together in 2006 and started playing stuff from it live. I think that because of the time that record came out, it was probably a bit overlooked. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah, 'cause it was all the Seattle sound back then, wasn't it, that was really popular.
Mm. Yeah, and of course the final record, The Devil You Know, made under the name Heaven and Hell. Your thoughts about that as a final testament to this era of the band?
That was the most fun record to make of all of them, because we were all heavily involved in the writing of it, and we wrote it all at Ronnie's studio at his house, and we had a really, really good time making it. We'd all grown up, and all the egos had gone out the window, and all that kind of stuff. All that was in the past, and we all really enjoyed each other's company, and had a really good fun time writing and doing the writing, and then the album. It was great.
Yeah. It really is. It's all four of the studio records I absolutely love, and I know that towards the end of Ronnie's life that you and he were very close, and I think it's great that you come out and do the charity stuff with us, and I hope you're polishing up the bowling ball. Hopefully we'll be able to bowl again soon.
Yeah.
Come on, Geez, you got your own shoes. I was telling everybody, man, you were good to go. You were good. You turned in two tremendous performances on the lanes with me.
Yeah, one good performance.
Did you get the shot? Are you good? Are you ready to hit the road again when things open up?
I've got both vaccinations done, and I'm really looking forward to be able to go back to England, because I haven't been there since December 2019. So my house over there has probably fell down by now. So I'm looking forward. I'm hoping to go back to England in May.
And last thing, in addition to this book, whenever you get around to finishing it, musically, are you working on anything? I hear Deadland Ritual may be a dead issue. Where do things stand with that? And do you want to play still and do a band, or would you ever want to play with Tony again in some configuration? What are you thinking as far as playing?
I'm just concentrating on this book for now. I mean, I still play, write riffs and stuff. You know, that's part of my life. But nothing definite. Yeah, Deadland Ritual's dead. So I've got so many ideas and stuff written. I just got to find the time to sit down and go through them all.
And what caused Deadland Ritual to be dead? Just trying to keep it together, the difficulty trying to start something brand new like that? What happened there?
The virus put the final nail in the coffin, because, I mean, we had 12 or 13 songs written. We were about to go into the studio in last March, and everything closed down. Matt left the band, and Steve, he's got a I think, a lung condition or something, so he couldn't leave the house because of the virus, and it just it just didn't revive it.
So it's not
you never
something.
know. He might do it in next year or something. I don't know.
Right. Well, look, it's always great to talk to you, Geezer. I appreciate the time. I hope I get a chance to see you soon. I'm glad you're all vaccinated, and hopefully you can get back to England and check on your place there. And my best to your wife and your family, and hopefully hopefully the DO events are able to happen this year, and we get to roll the bowling ball a little bit together again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, be great.
All right, my friend, take care of yourself. All right.
Okay, good speaking with you. See you.
All right, Geez. Okay, take care, man. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in, and please hit that like button, it's appreciated. Make sure that you subscribe for more rock-related content.